All right, I'm going to start. So I only have 5 minutes to try and convince you the band is not dead. I still do some banding in my practice, but I'm like 80% sleeve right now, or 70% sleeve, 20% bypass, maybe 2 or 3% band. These are my disclosures. They're not relevant. And the utilization worldwide, everybody here knows Mexico did a lot of bands in the past. Brazil used to do some bands, and my friends there tell me there is 0. But there's still pockets of utilization. So there's surgical centers that still do it in the US and even around the world. And now that Reshape has acquired the band and they're here in the exhibit hall, they're looking to hopefully jumpstart and get some more of the banding market back. So just want to talk about the long-term issues. This is what failed the band. It's a lot of work, a lot of maintenance. And in the different studies and in your own practice, there's anywhere from 10 to 50% reoperation rate. And there's also, because it's a device, it breaks down, the tubing breaks, so there's a lot of issues. And then ultimately, if the band is too tight or placed in the wrong position, or if the band's just been in for a very long time, you have reflux and esophageal issues. But when you look at weight loss, you have to decide what you're looking and how you're measuring success, and whether it is actual weight loss, like who lost the most weight, or is it health outcomes, and what you also look at is the degree of complications. How severe are the complications? What's the patient's quality of life? And then for us, as surgeons, how much follow-up do we have to do? This is a study, it's been quoted before, just on bands, looking at those that were revised as well as primary, and you can see, even if the Australians had the best outcome data, long-term you can see that they kept off and maintained some weight. So the band is not a complete failure. A lot of other studies showing something similar, but let's talk about some of the more public studies that were placed. One was Himpens, Jacques Himpens, and he presented that at 12 years, a lot of patients had their band out, but of those who kept their bands for 12 years, they had 48% excess weight loss, and of those, 60% were satisfied. And we all have patients in our practice that did well with the band, and we also have patients that did terrible with the band, and we had to take them out. Another study showed that if you keep the band and if you're successful at it, you can lose 43% excess weight loss. I think the key is to know that there's not one procedure for everybody, and to identify who may be a good candidate for the band. We've all been trying. There's some talk that in a lower BMI group, maybe the band is a good idea. And then figure out if you're, what are you going to do? Are you now going to give up on the band, but then start doing the endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty? Because that's not very durable, and then you also have to redo that. And also consider, if you're thinking about doing the band and it was something you did well, you can continue to offer it, but it was something that you never did well because the patient outcomes were bad, then don't do it. So I think follow-up is critical with a band. Reshape is going to launch and support practices that have done well with maintaining outcomes for band patients, and providing the follow-up. But so if you look at NYU, and I'm affiliated with NYU, our follow-up was 70% of patients at 7 years, which is really good. If you look at the ASMBS Center of Excellence data, sleeve follow-up at 1 year is 19%. So it is important to do good follow-up in order to make it work, and this is why it's hard for some practices, because you don't have the staff. But if you will start to look at bands again, I just found out from Reshape, who are here, that they are planning on supporting practices by teaching your staff how to care for the band. Okay, and another study that's showing that if you kept the band for whatever reason, you can have good results. And yet another one, again, showing that this paper is actually not about the band, but they looked at patients who regained and who didn't, who maintained, and the ones who maintained had better lifestyle, better nutritional behaviors, and that really is the key for all of our patients. It's not necessarily about the type of procedure, but it's about how to get the patient to eating better and making better choices and better lifestyle choices. I throw this up because one part of what I think about doing the band is that you can add medication. This is a functional MRI which showed that GLP-1 agonists, Camila, Okay, thank you. GLP-1 agonists really show you how it affects your reward center, and that GLP-1 agonists like Saxenda, which is liraglutide, or semaglutide, can actually make incredible differences for patients. So the banned future, it's really going to be in the hands of the few. It's not for everyone, and we know that. My practice, it takes a lot of time. You need more staff to manage the banned patient, but there are medications to assist with more weight loss. So when a patient who has a band comes back to see me and says, you know, I want this out, I'm not losing weight, but they've been maintaining, if they want to lose more weight, I'll add phentermine, or I'll give them a GLP-1 agonist. Also in the US, the band is really a better cash pay price alternative, and the key to it is to not make the band too tight. So I think there's still a future. I think some of the companies will support training and education, and it should be in everyone's armamentarium, whether you're doing it as a salvage after bypass, but it shouldn't be done by everybody. Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes. Good afternoon. I'm gonna give this talk in English because of our guest speaker, Marina. So I'm gonna speak about why the gastric band isn't useful anymore. And I'm gonna start my talk by doing a little survey. How many of you still place bands? Can you raise your hand? ¿Cuántos de ustedes ponen bandas gástricas todavía? So we have one hand up and two, okay? So, all right. So I'm gonna speak about why, in my perception, the band is not useful. We have, first of all, the rate of reoperation after a band, where we have compared it against the gold standard, which is a gastric bypass. We have a 12.23% of reoperation in adjustable gastric banding and just 2.5% in gastric bypass. If we speak about comorbidities or remission of comorbidities, we have a diabetes remission, and this is a grade A evidence, about 73.8% versus a 95.15%, while hypertension, if we look at that, we have a 53.5% versus an 80% with a gold standard. And if we look at dyslipidemia, we have a 39.95% versus an 80%. So we see that restricted plus malabsorptive procedures like a bypass, it is much more effective in remission of associated diseases of this surgery. If we look at the percentage of excess weight loss, we see we can compare three procedures. On top, we have the gastric bypass. In the middle, we have the gastric sleeve. And on the bottom, we have the gastric band. If we look at 12 months, 24 months, and 36 months, the percentage of excess weight loss in a gastric bypass, it is 74% at 12, 77, and 75. If we see at a gastric sleeve, it is superior than a gastric band, which we have a kind of a weight loss that is a little bit of plateau. This is evidence grade 1B. And we have a large meta-analysis of the result of 10 years with adjustable gastric banding. And we have all of these authors that in relation of excess weight loss, we have a 47.3% in all of this meta-analysis. If we speak about how many bands survive, this is a quite important number. 45% of the bands survive, and this is because and we're speaking about 10 years, only 45% of the bands survive. And this is because of leakage of the band, because of band removal, because of this cause, because of slippage, or because of insufficient weight loss and conversion to another procedure. So we also have complications in the long term, and these complications go from slippage, port complication, leakage of the band, esophagitis or reflux, erosion of the band, esophageal dilatation, and intolerance of the band and infection of the band. And they rate, and we can see the percentage, and it's a grade B evidence. So lots of complications related to a foreign body object. Also, if we look at esophagitis and reflux, we can see there's grade B evidence of reflux that on a new onset in about 15% of the patients, and of esophagitis of about 22.9% of new onset esophagitis in these patients. And the percentage of this motility after placing a gastric band is about 3.5% to 12%. It is depending on the series. So after these surgeries, these complications can also arise. Thank you.
I have 2 minutes. Oh, wow, I thought we just did it and no rebuttal. It's always better to go second. I always request that. I always say, let me go second so I can see. I think you're all valid points. It is a device and there's failure with it. As you know from my own practice, I'm not doing as much band, but my practice has always been not to overfill the band. When the patient comes back, it is a long conversation about why didn't you lose weight? I was on vacation, on a cruise, I was visiting family, or I just had a stressful time and I was eating chocolate. So I don't fill the band for those reasons, and what I try to do is get them on a better eating behavior and have them then, I medicate them. I got obesity medicine boarded because I realized I was medicating my bypass patients, my sleep patients, and certainly some of my band patients. I think the key to it is having them understand that they are going to be hungry, and it's just to try and help them with their portion size and not to over tighten it. And I think there's a bunch of different studies out there. Lou Aroney, who's a very big guy in obesity medicine, he started looking at the band patients out of New York Hospital, where Dr. Pompa is, and Greg Dakin, and Michelle Gagne used to be there, and he started giving them different medications to see what happened. When they had the band, and then their weight went up, he added phentermine. Then when they lost and they stabilized again on the medication, he added Belviq, which is another medication to try and stimulate more weight loss. So with that, he was able to get further weight loss than just the band. I think what we're doing now, with the opportunity of all these different medications, and I know that Saxenda is available in Mexico, you have a better opportunity to help all of your patients. And not for nothing, sometimes when these patients come back to other surgeons, they look at the esophagram, which I would look at and say, oh, it's not so bad, you're a little bit restricted, and they tell the patient, oh my God, you have a problem, we have to take this out and do another surgery. And that happens around the country and around the world. And I think you have to look at what's best for a patient. If the patient's not really having symptoms and they don't mind their band, you don't need to take it out. But if they want further weight loss, or you think their diabetes could be better controlled, then give them a GLP-1 agonist, add phentermine. Thank you.
I think the band had its place. I think obviously adding a medication to a surgery, any of the ones mentioned, a band, a sleeve, a gastric bypass, when failure is happening, will probably make it more effective. In that I have no questions about that. But I do agree on the point that we have to look at the band and the patient as surgeons, and also our multidisciplinary team look at the patient if it's really necessary to take out a band because of a complication, or we're just trying to convert a patient to another procedure just because. I think this is a very good point that we have to evaluate carefully. But if weight loss or resolution of comorbidities or any symptom related like reflux or any type of complication of the port of the band itself, we have to, make a decision in favor of the patient and remove the band if that is necessary. Thank you.